How's it going, everybody? And today in this Photoshop Elements tutorial we're going to show you how to create an Andy Warhol inspired pop art portrait. Our very first step is going to be to use the lasso tool to cut out our subject. And you really don't have to be too precise about this. It kind of helps if you bear in mind that when Warhol himself was doing these kinds of portraits, he would do so with a scalpel. He would use a scalpel to cut out his photographs. So that gives you an indication of the kind of precision that you do, or I guess you don't need for this technique. So it can be fairly rough and ready. Just drag and cut out as much of your subject as you would like to see. Just finish cutting around the shoulders here. And once you've finished cutting around the subject, we're going to go to Layer. We're going to create a new layer. And it's a new layer via copy. And what that does is create a new layer for us from the selection we've just made. So we can now hide the background. And if at this point you do feel that you've been a little bit too choppy with any parts of the image and, your scalpel work has not been as refined as you might like, you can use the eraser tool just to clean up any, little areas of the image. But to be completely truthful, having those little extra bits and bobs around your subject will actually help the look that we're going for. So I'd be inclined just to leave it as it is. So with our cutout layer, we are going to add a filter, or use a filter tool. So we're going to Filter, Adjustments, and Threshold. And you can see immediately here, that's given us straight away that silkscreen pop art look that Warhol is famous for, with his portraits of Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor and all those other famous folks. And depending on the image that you're starting with, as you can see here, our image is very well lit and very bright, so the default threshold it's given us works fairly well. If you've got a very dark image, you might want to push that threshold lower to bring out more of those tones. And if you've got a very, very bright image, you can push it higher to make it a little moodier. But as I said, for our purposes, the default setting was fine. And it is worth bearing in mind that this technique does work best with a subject who is well lit, who has lighter skin tones and has lighter hair tones. You can obviously use the shadow adjustment tool to bring up darker tones in the hair, but we don't have to worry about that in the image we're working with today. So a neat trick, and one that's useful for us in this case, is to hold down Control on a PC, Command on a Mac, and we're going to click the thumbnail icon. And as you can see straight away, the dancing ants have appeared around, and that's immediately highlighted our selection for us. From here, we're going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this one Skin Tone. And now we're going to use Edit, Fill Selection, and this tool is going to fill the selection we've just created. We want to choose a color, and we want to choose a flesh tone. So using the palette here, choose an appropriate flesh colored tone, click OK, and hey presto, our selection is now filled with flesh tone, but we can't see the beautiful outlines we've just created. So we need to go to the blend mode and toggle that down to multiply, and that will enable that black silkscreen ink work, if you like, to burn through. And from here, we're going to create another layer, which we are going to call Colors. And no points for guessing what colors is going to be useful. Again, we're going to change that blend mode. And now we're going to use the brush tool, and we're going to paint in some details. And there's no points for subtlety here. Go big, bright, bold, colorful with pop art, because that's the name of the game. I'm just going to use the square bracket to adjust the size of my brush, and we're going to start painting in the colored details of our image. And as with the scalpel work from before, don't worry about painting outside the lines. To be honest, with this technique, if you go outside the lines, it's actually going to work to your benefit. The choppier and not necessarily sloppier, but the more cavalier, pretend you're Andy Warhol, pretend that you've just rolled in from 90 Studio 54 with Mick Jagger and David Bowie. and you're in the mood to create. You're going to create some art. So you're not worried about things like filling in between the lines. You just want to create some art. You've got your turtleneck on, your horn-rimmed glasses, and as you can see, in our original image was actually a bridal image, and our subject, Tinkerbella, actually had red hair, but I've made her blonde, and that's the beauty of this technique, and it's the beauty of pop art as a medium, or as a form of art, is that it's expressionistic, and it enables you, it's transformative, it enables you to bring out different aspects and different colours, quite literally, of your subject's personalities. You can transform not just your subject, but also the photograph that you've taken. Again, the bridal image did not have this very bold green dress. It just seemed to fit the tone that we're going for. You know, Tinkerbella has this kind of, she's got the nose ring, the crazy updo haircut. You know, it seems like a very punk rock kind of vibe. So we're giving her this sort of punkish look, a bright green dress, bright yellow hair. Since I've got this nice green tone, I'm going to give her green eyes as well. And again, if you want to go a little bit out of the edges, do it on purpose if you want to. That adds to the look that you're going for. And don't forget the lipstick. Again, nothing subtle here. Big, bold, bright colours. And don't be afraid to go outside the lines. You know, if it works for Rob Smith, The Cure, it's good enough for you as well. You don't want to go too Ronald McDonald-y with this lipstick, so I'm going to adjust the size of my brush slightly. But going a little outside the lines is no problem. And at this stage, if you think back to Warhol's original portraits, actually the whites of the eyes were never white. It all remained this one silk-screened block colour. But if you do wish to paint in white details, you will notice that using a white brush actually doesn't work. And that's the nature of the layers in the multiply tool that we're using. The whites don't come through. So what you can do is go to the skin tone layer and actually use the eraser tool. And from here, this enables you to erase the skin tone that we painted in earlier. So to paint in the nose ring and the eyes if you so choose. And the reason we're using, or the reason I'm showing you to use the erase tool as opposed to just painting white on that skin tone layer, is because if you erase underneath the colours that you've painted in, you'll see that you can actually make those colours even brighter, because the way that the multiplier and the layers that we're using works is that you're painting on top of that base coat of skin tone, so that's being absorbed into the colours you paint on top. So as you can see, if I erase that skin tone from underneath, I get an even more bright and crazy set of colours here, which, you know, that's up to you if you want to do. Right now I'm not going to do that. I am going to go back and paint in some eyeshadow. And again, big, bold, bright colours. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be true to the example I've just suggested. And I am going to erase the tones in this blue just to make it a little bit punchier. Because that's that's quite something. So let's have some of that brightness in there. At this stage, we're nearly done. We are just going to, I'm going to fit that back to the screen just so we've got more to see. So select and deselect just to make sure that nothing else is selected, because we want to go now back and click on our background layer and create a new layer, which I'm going to call background. And either using the edit fill selection tool or the good old paint bucket tool, which is my weapon of choice right now, I'm going to drop in a nice fuchsia colour for our background. And at this point, you might actually be happy with that, because this is actually more authentic and more true to the look that Warhol actually used. They were all flat block colours. But if you want to add a little extra flourish to it and add something that's distinctly and fairly a signature of the pop art style, we can add a halftone, which is in Filter, Pixelate, Color Halftone. And depending on the image you've got to work with and the colours you're working with and your own personal preferences and taste, you might want to go for, say, a big radius such as 75, which gives you big blocks of halftone colour. But for me, I actually preferred something a little bit more subtle, if subtle is the right word for what we're doing, of 25. And as you can see, that gives that kind of printed comic book roughness with that halftone, which befits our style. And at that, I think I am done. So there we have it. Andy Warhol inspired pop art portraits. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.